Hello, BookTube. A very cloudy day has turned into a very rainy night here in Boston. A night in which the rain is coming down so steadily and so heavily that I really thought for a while there that my mailman would simply give it a miss. The Monday after a long Thanksgiving holiday is really not what anybody wants to be doing anyway. And my mailman knows that I don't really care if he gets to me today or tomorrow. It doesn't really matter to me. But he was a trooper. He showed up late, but he showed up with a lot of rain-sogged packages that I thought we'd go through together and see what kind of trouble we can get into. I'm going to try my hardest to manfully bear up under the fact that there are no huge packages here. This is a stack of ordinary size packages. There's nothing gigantic, nothing very heavy, nothing very thick, nothing. There are two boxes, but the boxes are petite. I'm going to struggle manfully against complaining about that in light of the fact that there are plenty of people who don't get any boxes of books in the mail every day. And I know that, and I want to be adult about all this, so we're just going to go through this as if, well, there'll be 800-page books coming in 2019. Well, they're coming. They're not probably here in this shipment, but let's see what we do have. So we'll start off with this one here. I have been reading feverishly in the last 24 hours because I didn't read as much as I usually do when I was on vacation. When I was having a Thanksgiving holiday in Vermont with a family, I did a lot of other things, but not a lot of reading. It once again gave me a very clear view of what a lot of people, what most people, what almost all other people on Earth have to deal with. They have families, they have friends, they have outings, all sorts of stuff. They don't just get to sit in this room and read all day long, periodically taking their little schnauzer out for a walk. I got a clear indication of what that's like, and I got a clear indication of its appeals. Obviously, on this channel, whenever I say that I don't have any life, that all I do is sit and read and write, I always say it vaguely tongue-in-cheek, and you'll notice that I never, I'm only joking when I criticize the rest of you for giving time to such things. And it was this Thanksgiving that reminded me what that's like. And one of the side effects was the same side effect that it has for all of you, which is that I did far less reading. Of course, it didn't hurt the fact that I went to bed pickled every night. but I have been making up for that in the last 24 hours, and I intend to make up for that this week in a major way. So, because this week is it. This is all I have for November before I launch onto December. And I want to do every month in the year justice, and December is already working under a handicap. So there's a lot of reading in my future. But what have we got here for this? Oh, wow, look at that. Oh, my. Okay, this comes out in April, not the right time of month for such a book, but this is a new collection of ghost stories with a properly grim cover. This is edited by Lisa Morton and the great Leslie Klinger. Fantastic. Does Leslie Klinger never sleep? And it has, well, anyway, let's see what it has. The ghost story has long been a staple of world literature, but many of the genre's greatest tales have been forgotten, overshadowed in many cases by their authors' best-selling work in other genres. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, Leslie Klinger is a great editor. I don't really know Lisa Morton's work, I don't think. But if there's a forgotten ghost story in here, I'm the Shah of Iran. So let's see. In this spine-tingling anthology, little-known stories from literary titans like Charles Dickens and Edith Wharton are collected alongside overlooked works from masters of horror fiction like Edgar Allan Poe and M.R. James. Kind of a case in point of what I'm talking about. None of those authors have overlooked works. None of them do. None of them have overlooked napkin jottings. Acclaimed anthologist Lisa Morton, who did a previous, it looks like she did a previous anthology about ghosts, and Leslie Klinger, who has done a stack of anthologies and whatnot, edited editions, as high as your eye, set these stories in historical context and trace the literary significance of ghosts in fiction over the almost 200 years. From a traditional English ballad printed in 1724 through the Christmas-themed ghost stories of the Victorian era and up to the science fiction tinged tales of the early 20th century. Fantastic. So who are the overlooked authors in this book? Sir Walter Scott? Yeah. Struggled his whole life, barely achieved any fame at all. Nathaniel Hawthorne, Edgar Allan Poe, Charles Dickens, Wilkie Collins, Ambrose Bierce, Henry James, Edith Wharton, M.R. James, and Mark Twain. Those are the ones on this cover. Those are the overlooked authors on this cover. What about elsewhere in the book? Elsewhere in the book. Give me a name that everyone doesn't know. All right, Elizabeth Stewart Phelps. There's a name that no one knows anymore. Charlotte Riddell. Nobody knows her. Frank Stockton. Wow, there's a Frank Stockton story in here. Wow, oh, okay, great. Olivia Howard Dunbar? No. No. Oh, Arthur Machen? Okay. Georgia Wood Pangborn? Okay, so it looks like a solid third of the anthology in this book are actually overlooked authors, people who have been forgotten, who wrote in this genre and many others, and then were heard no more. So I guess I would probably have written that pub sheet a little differently. Of course, this book is anchored by authors and stories that you have read. Of course it is, but it's a great way to start. That's fantastic. Okay, so what's this next one? It's from Oxford University Press, but it's as small as a coaster. What could possibly be in here? It could be so small. Oh, God help us. Okay. All right. Do I have a cover mock-up? Not big enough for you to see. It's from Oxford University Press. It comes out in April. It's by Michael Ruse, and it's called A Meaning to Life. Tiny little thing for an enormous subject. Do you ever ponder the ultimate question? Do our lives have any meaning? No, I don't ponder it. It's not a tough question. Our lives have the meaning we give to them. There, see? I did. No pondering at all. That was easy. Next. Or do we come from an eternity of oblivion, try to lead worthwhile lives, and then return to an eternity of oblivion with the understanding that there is no meaning? Those two things are not exclusive. It's not an either or. They're not opposite sides of the coin. Your life has the meaning you give to it. And you come from an eternity of nothingness, live for a short amount of time, and then enter into an eternity of nothingness with the understanding and the reality being that there is nothing more. Those two things are the same thing. They're not opposite sides. It's not like you either take one side or the other. They're both true. You make the meaning in your life. You give your life meaning. What will I work for? What will I sacrifice for? What will I sublimate my own desires for? Or will I? What are the shortcuts that I will and will not take? What do I value? How much will I give? What will I make? You make those decisions for the tiny fraction of an eye blink of time that you are here. And then you are here no more. And that's it. That's all there is to it. No part of you lives on. Only your memories and your creations. Only that. And that's it. Just like no part of you existed before. That's it. That's all. A tiny window of time. Just a tiny window of time. You are in a completely darkened closet. The door opens and then closes. That's it. That opening and closing is your life. So, of course, regardless of what Michael Ruse says, I know what I say, which is make the most of it. Don't treat it as the forecourt that you must sort of boringly waste time in before your real life starts. Don't do that, even though every religion on earth urges you to. Don't do it. Trust me when I tell you, on your deathbed, on the edge of nothing, you will know you were wrong. You'll know it before you go. And that's a horrible feeling. Embrace it now. Take all the chances now. Try everything now. Believe in things now. Care about things now. That meme that was going around BookTube and everywhere else a couple of years ago about see all the F's that I don't give. Oh, I can't even count all the F's I don't give. It sickened me. You're here to give F's. So you're never going to get another chance to give F's. So do it. And also, since we're in the month of NaNoWriMo, I might add to that, make things. Make something. Make something. If you're listening to me watching these videos, then you are the possessor, the inheritor of a staggering amount of wealth, comfort, security, a staggering amount of it. No matter what you think about your day-to-day life, a staggering amount of security. Your counterpart 18 centuries ago could not have made anything. Making things in his time was reserved for the wealthy. You have the ability to make things now. I don't really care what it is, but you have the ability to do it. Do it. Don't wait. Don't put it off. Don't say, when I have more time. Do it now. Anyway, let's see what the pub sheet has to say about this book, as opposed to Steve Philosophy 101. In the past, scholars and theologians turned to religion for the answer. No, in the past, scholars and theologians were the same thing. They didn't both turn to religion for the answer. They were the same thing. Life has meaning because humans were made in the image of a good God. In the 19th century, however, Charles Darwin's theory of evolution changed everything, and the human organism was seen to be more machine than spirit. Only by people who've never read Darwin and don't understand anything about natural selection or evolution. Only by people who willfully don't understand what they're talking about. Are you going to tell me that this book, published by Oxford University Press, the greatest press in the world, is written by someone who willfully misunderstands what he's talking about? Because no evolution proponent, Darwin or otherwise, has ever said that makes people into machines. Just the opposite. Machines don't do any of the things you need to do in order to make evolution a go. And also, I might point out that a God who tortures people forever is not good. So, I don't know what that image of a good God is. The image of God, yes, certainly. Sometimes good, sometimes wrathful, sometimes irrational, sometimes short-tempered, always with short-sightedness. That, maybe, but not in the image of a good God. But anyway, this isn't going well at all. Ever since, with the rise of science and the decline of religious belief, there has been a growing interest and growing doubt about whether human life really does have meaning. If it does, where might we find it? You find it in your own life. You make it yourself. There's no external source of meaning. And I want to stress that because this description like that is obviously leading up to the fact that if there is such a thing as meaning in human life, then there's no such thing as a corresponding meaning in any other life, which makes perfect sense when you think about how humans have behaved towards livestock. What's the meaning of a cow's life? Historian and philosopher of science Michael Ruse, why do I know that name? I know that name. Investigates these questions and whether we can find a new meaning to life within Darwinian views of human nature in his book, A Meaning to Life. Although many Darwinians believe that evolution is seen as progress. What? Progress? Oh, no Darwinian. First of all, there's no such thing as a Darwinian. But no person who is seen as progress? What on earth does that mean? Light is composed of photons. Is that progress? It's just science. It's not. Ruse argues the complete opposite. He introduces to readers the idea that meaning can be found in the Darwinian age if we turn to an updated form of existentialism, seeing our evolved human nature as the source of all meaning, both in the intellectual and the social world. Ruse suggests by accepting our true nature, evolved over millennia, that humankind can truly find what is meaningful. A meaning to life will leave readers with more sensible and responsible attitude towards their place in their challenging and exciting world within which they find themselves. Living in. Okay. Let's go through that again, just so the full horror of Halloween is not gone, just because it's a meaning to life will leave readers with a more sensible and responsible attitude towards their place in this challenging and exciting world within which they find themselves living in. You too have a promising career as the writer of a publicity sheet for Oxford University Press. I don't even know what language that is. I hope you'll keep it in mind for your April 2019 coverage. Okay, what has Michael Ruse done? Michael Ruse is he's a professor of philosophy and director of the program in the history of science and the history and science of philosophy. Okay, all right, let's take it from the top. This guy has a job title that's as long as the alphabet. Michael Ruse is the Lucille T. Werkmeister Professor of Philosophy and Director of the Program in the History and Philosophy of Science at Florida State University. I don't know what his job is. He has written and edited more than 50 books, including most recently On Purpose and the Oxford University volumes Darwinism as Religion. Okay, so he edited a volume on Darwinism as Religion. That tells me a lot. That tells me pretty much everything I need to know about this guy. But I have a feeling that I mean, that's just a very abbreviated look at his publishing career. I have a feeling I know. I have a feeling I've read and reviewed work of his in the past. I'll have to look it up and see. Well, okay, that pub sheet, in addition to ending on just an absolute nails on chalkboard grammar soup of a sentence, is also just infuriating. Just absolutely infuriating. So I'll have to see what the book does. I'll wait until the spring and see what the book does. Long before I check that, though, I'm going to check to see what encounters I have had with Michael Ruse in the past. Darwinism is not a religion. That gets a little tiresome when critics when people who don't want to believe in Darwin's theory of evolution call belief in that theory a religion. That's kind of tiresome. I encounter that a bit, and I don't like it. Let's move on. Let's see if this new book brings us all together again. Maybe it will. Maybe it'll bring us all together again, because that last book was trying to drive us apart. This has been a very contentious mail. Look at that. Okay, there you go. This is something to which no one can object to. This is out in early January. It's a finished copy of something that we saw before, and it's lovely. The finished copy is much nicer than the one that I got, than the advanced copy. This is a full-color guide to the nature of Cape Cod and Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket and the islands. This is a full color. It's got the French flaps there. It's got track guides for you to tell what has tromped through your snow or through the soil of your garden. It has, oh God, it's so much prettier than, it has full color orientation stuff at the beginning to let you know how all of these islands formed and what they're made of. It has atmospheric photos of what they look like now, nature photos, and then it moves on to guides. Full color guides, photograph and artwork of everything. How wonderful. Look at that. Salt marshes. One of my favorite places to be. Salt marshes. This explains everything that goes on in a salt marsh and all the different types of life that you will find there. And you will find quite a few salt marshes at the Cape and the islands. Fantastic. Oh, this is beautiful. Okay, a nature guide to Cape Cod. A lovely thing. I always wonder how reviewable such things are. I will give this one a try in the new year. Then we have one of these big, gigantic things. Books on a conveyor belt. Almost always encompassing a book that is much, much smaller than this. The book that's in here won't need 50 yards of cardboard to block it up. Let's see what it is. Oh, okay. This is a finished copy from the Capo Press of Katie Morton's Are You Okay? Let's see here. The shocking deaths of Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain have reignited a national conversation about mental illness and the warning signs of suicidal ideation, reminding us that even people who have all measures of outward success, fame, wealth, and caring loved ones, can be struggling. According to a 2018 report by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, suicide rates have risen more than 30% over the last 2 decades, and more than half of the people who died by suicide did not have a known mental health condition. Many struggling don't seek care because of stigma, embarrassment, or a lack of understanding about the available types of treatment. Because mental illness can't be seen, we often argue with ourselves and with those who care about us most over what defines sick enough. Are You Okay? Explores the more commonly asked questions about mental health and seeks to dismantle common misconceptions about mental illness. Katie Morton asks questions like, what is the difference between mental health and mental illness? Well, that's a good question, isn't it? And surprising. You think you have an answer right away. That's a good question. What kind of mental health provider do I need? What should I expect from my first therapy appointment? Is my therapist a good fit? I'm in therapy but still struggling. How do I get more help? Do I need medication? Okay. Morton provides tips for setting up a first appointment. Oh, so this is a very practical guide to seeking mental help if you think you need it. Interesting. That's not exactly what I had in mind. Of course, I've had the advanced copy of this for a while. It's mid-December that it's due, and I haven't touched it. I confess, not only because I've been blocked by lots and lots of stuff, but also because the subject doesn't touch on me directly, and I'm as much a reader as the rest of you. I tend to gravitate towards subjects that do, and this one doesn't. Like, for instance, the assumption hiding in the back of everything in this pub sheet, and I'm sure hiding in the back of everything in this book, is that everybody needs mental help. And that I don't believe is true any more than everybody needs physical help. I think that drastically undersells the resilience of the human psyche. I don't require any kind of mental intervention, mental health intervention. Another thing floating around on this pub sheet, I'm pretty sure the pub sheet won't concentrate exclusively on suicide. I think the pub sheet does that in order to stress the dramatics of the book. But nevertheless, I mean, I'd be interested in breaking down the numbers from the Center for Disease Control and find out about those rising rates in suicide. But I've always resisted the idea that psychiatry has fostered, or especially over the last 50 years, that anyone who thinks of suicide, I don't know what suicidal ideation is. I think it means fixation. But the psychiatry industry and the booming pharmaceutical arm of that industry in the last 50 years have pushed forward, they've really mainstreamed the idea that anyone who thinks of suicide for any reason is mentally ill. And I don't think that's right. And I don't think that's healthy. I don't think that's realistic at all. I think there are a number of reasons why someone who has no mental health issues whatsoever would not only consider suicide, but actually do it. It's a very awkward subject, especially in a mental health oriented society like the one we have today, but I do believe it's true. I don't think you need to be mentally unbalanced to consider suicide under a certain set of circumstances. Like, for instance, this pub sheet mentions that in the last 20 years, those rates have skyrocketed. It's also true that in the last 20 years, the cost of medical help has skyrocketed. Just gone through the roof. How many of those people that were covered in that Center for Disease Control, how many of those people were looking ahead to a future in which, even with health insurance, they were going to be a $475,000 expense to their loved ones, and decided, I don't want to die, I don't want to be ill, I am not morbidly depressed, I know all the stuff that I'll be missing, and I know the pain that my suicide will be inflicting on everyone else, but I am deciding that I don't want to saddle my loved ones with a debt they can't pay off in 3 generations. I am making the decision not to do that, even though it goes against what I want. I wonder how many of those people were in that position. Or even if the money was there, even if the insurance covered everything, somebody gets a diagnosis saying, you're going to live for the next 40 years, but you've got a degenerative nerve disorder, and every single one of those 40 years, you're going to be less and less capable of taking care of yourself. In circumstances like that, and a few others, we could make a list. I'm sure that some come to your mind. Under those circumstances, a person who is completely mentally healthy could not only think about suicide, but do it. And I wonder. I will let you know. I will report back. This is intensely interesting, this book. This comes out in mid-December, so I can read this tonight. And I want to know how nuanced it is. I want to see now how nuanced it is, because this is an incredibly important subject. One of the things that's right about it, that I resisted for a long time, and now, thanks to the efforts of a lot of people to bring this stuff into the sunlight and get people talking about it and thinking about it, and unfortunately, I think overdiagnosing it, and especially over-medicating it, but that's a side effect you're going to get with anything. But and it's the only negative side effect of an entirely beneficial and positive phenomenon, which is to get people more aware of this, get people more aware of mental health, get people more aware of maybe deficiencies in their own mental health, and that there's help out there, there's help available. But one of the things I want to know about this is how nuanced a job it does. Because I've read a lot of books like this, and I'm no expert, but one thing I can pick up on is when somebody's doing a flat-footed job, and that doesn't, it bothers me because the subject's too important for that. So that was that was the huge cover. Now we have 2 boxes, and then we'll be done with this extremely rambly mail haul. You can obviously tell that I've missed doing this because I'm discoursing on everything, and nobody wants that. Let's see here. I resist the idea completely that we're all mentally unhealthy. I think that is exclusively a construction of the people who are then trying to sell you the medication that will fix your ailment. And those people, in any situation, must not be trusted. The person who points out a problem should be listened to in exactly inverse proportion to whether or not they propose a solution that financially benefits them. The minute they suggest that, you should dismiss them and the problem that they pointed out. And that's an unhealthy way to look at this whole subject, I know, but it drives me nuts. I can't help it. I am trying to help it. I'm trying to evolve my own thinking. But I don't think that most Americans, most Europeans, I don't think most people have any conception of the money, power, and reach of the pharmaceutical industry today. I don't. I really don't. I don't think they have any conception of how thoroughly schools of thought and disciplines of behavior and study have been sculpted by that amount of money, that Everest of money, that Niagara Falls of money, to the point where the thinking in the air nowadays, now in the 21st century, is that we are all, to one extent or another, mentally ailing. That everybody needs medication of some kind or another. That absolutely is not true. It isn't true for probably 30% of the people who are on medication. Where the pharmaceutical industry and the psychiatrists who are its bought and paid for subsidiaries have created this idea that if you're not always happy, then you're depressed and you should be medicated. Naturally, such thinking, even implied, is not going to fly with a member of my generation. But anyway, what is the next thing we've got here? It can't be as contentious as all this. God help us. Mental health, God, what are we going to do? Animal rights will come up. I'm sure it will. So this one is by Adrian Mayer, and it is called Gods and Robots, Myths, Machines, and the Ancient Dreams of Technology. This is by the author of Amazons, a book that I didn't like at all. Let's hope for better this time around. What is this? The first robot to walk the earth was a bronze giant called Talos. This wondrous machine was created not in an MIT robotics lab, but by Hephaestus, the Greek god of invention. More than 2,500 years ago, long before medieval automata, and centuries before technology made self-moving devices possible, Greek mythology was exploring ideas about creating artificial life and grappling with still unresolved ethical concerns about biotech, life through craft. In this compelling, richly illustrated book, the author tells the fascinating story of how ancient Greek, Roman, Indian, and Chinese myths envisioned artificial life, self-moving devices, and human enhancements, and how these visions related to and reflect the ancient invention of real animated machines. Okay. God bless University Presses. So this is due. Oh no, this came out a week ago. So that's not good. I'll have to get to this right away. I haven't read it, and it sounds fascinating, and will almost certainly not be the kind of shallow trot that maybe this book will actually make me think twice about the book Amazons. Maybe I should go back to that. I didn't think dug very deep at all. This, I don't know. We'll see. I'll give it a try. I've got so few books on classical headings in 2018 that I'm glad to jump into the one I got. And then we've got the last box, and then we're done. There's just been a string of hideously long videos for you to ignore today. This box is extremely thin and extremely light, so it's probably not going to be anything all that good. So, well, Steve likes his books big and fat and heavy, and this one is a bantamweight thing. So let's see. It's from Oxford University Press. All right. It's a reprint volume. Did not know this was coming. This is out in early December. This is a reprint volume of Rachel Carson's The Sea Around Us. My favorite of all her books. Okay. Originally published in 1951, The Sea Around Us is one of the most influential books ever written about the natural world. Rachel Carson's ability to combine scientific insight with poetic prose catapulted her book to the top of the New York Times bestseller list, where it remained for more than a year and a half. Ultimately, it sold well over 1 million copies, was translated into 28 languages, inspired an Academy Award-winning documentary, and won both the National Book Award and the John Burroughs Medal. The sea around us remains as fresh today as it was when it first appeared. Carson's genius for evoking the power and primacy of the world's bodies of water, combining the cosmic and the intimate, remains almost unmatched. The sea sustained human life and imperiled it. Today, the ocean endangered by the dumping of medical waste and ecological disasters such as the Exxon oil spill in Alaska, the gradual death of the Great Barrier Reef, and the melting of the polar ice caps, Carson's book provides a timely reminder of both the fragility and the centrality of the ocean and life around it. Incredible. It's an Oxford University Press paperback reprint of The Sea Around Us in a beautiful edition, prettier than any edition that I have. This will be the edition that I keep. How wonderful to get this in the mail. Okay. Definitely deserves a reread. Haven't reread it in a long time. And of course, the pub sheet was written months and months ago, but the story goes on and on. I'm sure you all saw the headline just the other day. A whale that washed up with pounds and pounds of plastic in its innards. The ingesting of plastic in the ocean almost certainly killed it. And just recently, there was the story that the plastic island that's in the Atlantic Ocean, this just gigantic coagulated island of plastic refuse, is now bigger than France. The plastic island floating on the surface of the Atlantic is bigger than France. And it's just getting bigger all the time. Yeah, so this really is as relevant as ever. And boy, oh boy, I'm glad the pub sheet mentioned the eloquent prose, because this is just wonderfully written. Wow, okay, well. All right. Okay. So, all right. So that's quite the mail haul. It took a long time. Sorry about the length of the video. I will chop these down to a more manageable length. I missed you all. I missed doing this, and that's causing all my videos to go over 30 minutes. But we'll get the hang of it again. So we have Gods and Robots, about the ancient world's conception of not only artificial in machines but also prosthesis. Then Are You Okay? Which was a guide to caring for your mental health, how to know if you need it, how to know if you need help, and where to find it. If I'd read that subtitle originally, I wouldn't have been quite so surprised by the pragmatic drift of the book. That's interesting. That could make it really useful for a lot of people. Then Ghost Stories, new anthology in the early spring of ghost stories from little-known authors like Charles Dickens and Edith Wharton. And then we have Cape Cod, a guide in full glorious color, pictures and artwork, to the nature and geology and whatnot of Cape Cod, Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard, and all the little islands. I know this information very well. I've spent most of the time that I've spent on all of those islands and all along the Cape. I spent hunched down, nose to nose with the kind of life forms that are mentioned here. So I can't wait to read about them in this new book. Then A Meaning to Life by Michael Ruse. He and I shall meet again on the road to Samara. And The Sea Around Us by Rachel Carson. How wonderful. An Oxford University Press, just a lovely paperback reprint. This is going to be in your bookstores. A pretty paperback reprint. When is the date on this? Mid-December? So it will be there in your bookstores. You can have it, if your library has low copies or you never get to use bookstores, you can just buy a copy of The Sea Around Us in the prettiest paperback it's ever had. And that is our mail haul. We're all over the map. We're a book that I love. We've got a nature guide to the place on Earth that I love probably more than any other, a collection of ghost stories, mental health, ancient history, the meaning of life, and also, in this pile, an author I knew. so there you go. So that's our mail haul for this rainy Monday, and I'm going to wrap this up before this video goes any longer. So I will promise shorter videos tomorrow. In the meantime, I will see you later. Thank you, BookTube.